The autumn of 1977 draped Fort Lee, Virginia in a haze of golden leaves and crisp air, but the chill in my heart came from a wound far deeper than the season's bite. I stood in the gravel driveway of our modest base, housing my cheeks stinging from the slap my husband, Captain Michael Thompson, had just delivered. The crowd of neighbors, wives of soldiers, men on leave, and kids clutching bicycles gaped in stunned silence. Michael's hand had struck me, not for some grave sin of my own, but to defend Sarah Brooks, the pregnant widow of his fallen comrade, who stood behind him, her eyes gleaming with a satisfaction she didn't bother to hide. Emily Carter. "How dare you speak about Sarah that way?" Michael's voice boomed, his face flushed with anger. "She's grieving, and you're out here making a scene like some jealous harpy." His words cut deeper than the slap, each syllable a betrayal from the man I'd vowed to love through deployments and danger. Sarah, clutching her swollen belly, let out a theatrical sob, her delicate features twisting as if she were the victim. The neighbors murmured, some nodding in sympathy for her, others casting judgmental glances my way. I pressed a hand to my burning cheek, the pain sharp and grounding. Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth, and as I wiped it away, a wave of dizziness hit me, not from the blow, but from something far stranger. Memories vivid and relentless flooded my mind like a film reel from a life I'd lived before. I saw it all: Michael bringing Sarah into our home, her demands draining our meager savings, and their cruel plan to swap my unborn child with hers, a dark-skinned baby, to frame me for infidelity and ruin my life. In that past life, I'd been too naive, too trusting, and paid for it with decades of misery. But now fate had granted me a second chance, a rebirth to right those wrongs. My name is Emily Carter, and I was no longer the fool I'd been. Those memories, as clear as the Virginia sky above, revealed every lie, every betrayal. I knew Michael and Sarah were plotting to destroy me, to use my child as a pawn in their twisted game. They thought they could break me again, but this time I was awake. I was ready. The sting of Michael's hand was nothing compared to the fire now burning in my chest, a resolve to make them pay for every ounce of pain they'd caused in this life and the last. As the crowd dispersed, whispering about my shame, I stood tall, my eyes locked on Michael. He avoided my gaze, fussing over Sarah as he guided her back to our house, her arm looped through his like she owned him. The neighbors' pitying looks followed me, but I didn't care. I had a plan, and it started with protecting myself. My story is one of betrayal and redemption, and I'm sharing it with you because I know there are others out there who've felt the sting of deceit. If you've ever been wronged, if you've ever fought to reclaim your strength, then join me on this journey. Hit that like button if you're rooting for justice, drop a comment with your story of resilience, and subscribe to this channel to follow every twist of my revenge. Together we'll see how the mighty fall. The slap wasn't just a physical blow, it was the spark that ignited my awakening. In my previous life, I'd crumbled under Michael's accusations, letting him and Sarah paint me as a disgrace. I remembered the day they swapped my baby, the dark-skinned infant they claimed was mine, and how Michael had screamed that I'd cheated with a foreigner. The military community turned on me, my job at the base's admin office vanished, and I was exiled to rural Virginia, caring for Michael's paralyzed mother for 30 years, while he and Sarah lived a life of privilege. Before my death, they confessed Sarah was Michael's true love, and the baby was hers, a secret they'd buried to protect her reputation. That memory fueled me now. I wasn't pregnant yet, but I knew their plan was already in motion. Michael had brought Sarah home 3 months ago, claiming she was David Brooks's widow, and I'd welcomed her blind to their affair. But now, with my past life knowledge, I saw every glance, every touch for what it was, a betrayal dressed in pity. Sarah's pregnancy was at the same stage as mine would have been, a coincidence too perfect to be accidental. They were waiting for my child to be born, ready to swap it with hers and destroy me. I walked back to the house, my steps steady despite the ache in my jaw. Michael and Sarah were inside, her voice soft and plaintive as she played the grieving widow. "Michael." "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she murmured loud enough for me to hear through the thin walls. "Emily's just upset. I may leave." Her words were calculated, designed to make me seem petty, but I wasn't falling for it. I slipped into the bedroom, locking the door behind me. In the mirror, my reflection showed a woman reborn, not the broken Emily of my past life, but a warrior ready to fight. My first move was to protect myself. I couldn't let their plan unfold. Tomorrow, I'd drive to a clinic in Richmond, far from the prying eyes of Fort Lee, and make a choice that would shatter their scheme. I'd keep my pregnancy a secret, let them think I was still expecting, and use their ignorance against them. Every lie they'd told, every dollar they'd stolen, every moment they'd spent scheming, I'd make them pay for it all. This was my second chance, a gift from some cosmic force that refused to let injustice stand, and I wasn't going to waste it. The military base buzzed with gossip that night, the story of Michael's slap spreading like wildfire. I heard the whispers through the open window, wives clucking about my jealousy, men praising Michael's honor in protecting a widow. They didn't know the truth, but they would. I sat at my small desk, writing in a journal I'd started to track my plans. Page 1. Michael and Sarah think they can ruin me. They're wrong. I underlined the words, my pen digging into the paper. This journal would be my map weapon and testament to justice. As I wrote, I thought of you, the ones watching this story unfold. Maybe you've felt that same sting of betrayal, that moment when someone you trusted turned against you. Perhaps you've dreamed of fighting back, of turning the tables. I'm telling this story on this channel to share the fire driving me. If my fight resonates with you, smash that like button to show you're with me. Leave a comment, tell me how you faced betrayal or what you'd do in my shoes. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. The road to justice is long, but I'm walking it, and I want you with me for every step. The next morning I woke before dawn, the Fort Lee base still cloaked in the quiet of early fall. Michael slept on the couch, his snores a reminder of his indifference, while Sarah occupied the guest room, her presence an insult in my own home. I slipped into a loose sweater to hide my still flat stomach, grabbed my car keys, and drove 2 hours to a small clinic in Richmond. The decision I was about to make weighed heavily, but my past life memories gave me clarity. I couldn't let Michael and Sarah use my child as a pawn in their cruel game. At the clinic, a kind nurse named Linda guided me through the process. "You're sure about this, honey?" she asked, her eyes soft with concern. I nodded, my voice steady. "I have to protect myself." The procedure was quick, the pain sharp but bearable, a small price for the freedom it would buy me. I left with a prescription for painkillers and a plan to keep up the illusion of pregnancy. Back home, I stuffed a small pillow under my dress, adjusting it to mimic a 3-month bump. Michael and Sarah had no idea the child they planned to exploit was already gone. Returning to Fort Lee, I moved carefully, feigning early pregnancy fatigue. Michael barely noticed me, his attention fixed on Sarah as she lounged in the living room, flipping through a magazine she'd demanded he buy. "Emily, you look pale," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You should rest more for the baby." Her eyes flicked to my stomach, and I caught the glint of calculation. She thought she had me trapped, but I set the stage. Over the next few days, I played my part perfectly. I complained of morning sickness, wincing as I carried laundry baskets, all while watching Michael and Sarah. He doted on her, bringing her coffee and snacks while I cooked and cleaned, my resentment simmering but hidden. My past life memories told me they were biding their time, waiting for my delivery date to swap my baby with Sarah's and accuse me of infidelity. But without a child, their plan would collapse, and I'd be ready to expose them. I began securing my resources. At the base's admin office, where I typed reports for the quartermaster, I requested a private meeting with my supervisor, Mrs. Helen Reed. I told her I need to protect my savings, explaining Michael's habit of taking my paycheck for Sarah's expenses. Helen, a no-nonsense woman who'd seen her share of military spouse drama, arranged for my wages to be deposited into a new account Michael couldn't access. "You're smarter than he thinks, Emily," she said with a wink. I smiled, grateful for an ally. At home, I hid my cash in a locked box under a loose floorboard in the bedroom, a secret spot Michael would never think to check. I also started documenting everything, every dollar Michael gave Sarah, every time he stayed late at her side, every lie they told. My journal grew thicker, a record of their betrayal that would become my weapon. I wrote down Sarah's demands for steak and eggs, luxuries we couldn't afford in 1977's economy, and Michael's excuses about honoring a promise to his fallen comrade David Brooks. One evening, as I washed dishes, I overheard Michael and Sarah whispering in the backyard. "She's starting to ask questions," Sarah said, her voice low. "What if she figures it out?" Michael shushed her. "Emily's too soft. She'll do what I say." Their confidence made my blood boil, but it also confirmed my suspicions they were hiding something big. I needed to know more about Sarah's past and knew just the person to help. I called Tom Hargrove, a retired military police officer who'd settled in Petersburg and now worked as a private investigator. Tom had been a friend of my father's, a man who taught me to ride a bike and trusted my judgment. Over coffee at a diner off base, I explained my situation, leaving out the rebirth part too wild for even Tom to believe. I told him that Sarah's not who she says she is. "Can you dig into her background? Find out if she's really David Brooks's widow?" Tom nodded, his weathered face serious. "Give me a week, Emily. If she's lying, I'll find it." While Tom worked, I kept up my act. Sarah's demands grew bolder. She wanted new dresses, a radio, even a fancy cream for her skin. Michael obliged, dipping into our joint account until I locked it down. When he confronted me, I played the fragile, pregnant wife. "The doctor says stress could hurt the baby," I said, clutching my fake belly. He backed off, grumbling, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. He needed my pregnancy to go forward for their plan to work. The base was a small world, and gossip spread fast. Neighbors noticed Michael's constant attention to Sarah, and a few, like Mrs. Clara Evans, started to side with me. Clara, a sharp-tongued widow who lived across the street, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Emily, that's Sarah's trouble. I saw her and Michael holding hands behind the commissary. You watch yourself." Her warning, echoing my past life memories, strengthened my resolve. I thanked her, promising to buy her coffee soon. As the days passed, I felt the weight of my secret plan lifting my spirits. I wasn't the broken woman from my past life, serving Michael and Sarah like a slave. I was Emily Carter, reborn with a purpose. Every step I took, hiding money, contacting Tom, faking my pregnancy, was a brick in the wall I was building to trap them. They thought they could ruin me, but I was already one step ahead, waiting for the moment to strike. By the end of the week, Tom called with a lead. He said Sarah Brooks isn't listed as David Brooks' widow in any military records. "I'm digging deeper, but something's off. Stay sharp, Emily." His words confirmed what my past life memories had hinted at. Sarah was a fraud, and Michael was complicit. I thanked him, my heart racing with anticipation. The truth was close, and when I had it, I'd use it to dismantle their lies. I'd keep playing the dutiful wife, letting Michael and Sarah dig their graves. The spring of 1977 in Fort Lee, Virginia, was a time of blooming dogwoods and rationed gasoline. In this world, every penny counted, and military families clung to routine to survive the uncertainty. I, Emily Carter, stood at the kitchen sink of our cramped base, housing scrubbing dishes as the screen door creaked open. My husband, Captain Michael Thompson, stepped inside, his uniform crisp, but his face uneasy. Behind him trailed a woman, her belly rounded with pregnancy, her auburn hair pulled into a neat bun. "Emily," Michael said, his voice too casual. "This is Sarah Brooks, David Brooks's widow. She's 3 months along, just like you. I promised David I'd look after her and her baby." Sarah offered a small smile, her green eyes scanning our modest living room. Faded curtains, a second-hand couch, a radio that crackled on a good day. I dried my hands on a dish towel, my pregnancy barely showing beneath my apron, and stepped forward. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Sarah," I said, my heart aching for her. David Brooks, Michael's comrade, had died in a training accident, or so Michael claimed. In a town where duty and honor bound us, I didn't hesitate. "You're welcome to stay with us. We'll make it work." Michael nodded, his relief palpable, but something in his eyes, a flicker of secrecy, set me on edge. I pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to my hormones. The 1977 economy was brutal. Gas lines stretched for blocks, and meat was a luxury we rationed like gold. Sharing our home with Sarah meant stretching our budget thinner, but I couldn't turn away a grieving widow. I showed her to the guest room, a small space with a single bed and a chipped dresser, and promised to make her comfortable. Over the next week, I learned Sarah was a former college student from Richmond, her voice carrying the polished cadence of city life. She spoke of art history classes and dreams of teaching, but her hands were soft, untouched by labor. I worked long hours at the base's admin office, typing supply reports, then came home to cook, clean, and wash Sarah's laundry alongside my own. She'd sit at the kitchen table, sipping tea I'd brewed her pregnancy, an excuse to do nothing. She'd say, "I'm just so tired." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were distant. "This baby takes everything out of me." Michael, meanwhile, was her shadow. He'd check on her first thing in the morning, bringing her toast or a blanket, while I burned through my energy keeping the house running. He'd promised to care for her, but his attentiveness felt excessive. Lingering conversations, quick smiles, a hand on her shoulder that stayed too long. I told myself it was his duty, but my past life memories, still dormant, then whispered warnings I couldn't yet hear. As I chopped carrots for a stew one evening, Sarah sighed dramatically. "Michael, do we have any fresh eggs? This baby is craving protein." Her voice was a practiced lilt, and I caught Michael's glance toward our near-empty pantry. He said, "I'll get some tomorrow," his tone soft, the same one he used to reserve for me. I bit my lip, calculating our budget. Eggs were scarce, and we'd already skipped meat this week to afford diapers for our unborn child. Yet Michael never questioned her requests. The next day, he came home with a carton of eggs and a pound of ground beef, which cost half my weekly paycheck. For Sarah, he said, not meeting my eyes. I nodded, swallowing my frustration. I wanted to believe in his honor and the promise he'd made to a fallen friend, but Sarah's presence grew heavier each day. She ate the eggs scrambled, leaving the dishes for me, and napped while I swept the floors. My pregnancy mirrored hers, yet I carried the burden of two. At the admin office, my coworker Helen Reed noticed my exhaustion. "You're doing too much, Emily," she said, her gray eyes sharp. "That widow's got you running ragged." Helen, a veteran's wife with a knack for spotting trouble, had a way of cutting through nonsense. I confided in her about Sarah's demands and Michael's favoritism, my voice low to avoid gossip. "Just keep your eyes open," she advised. "Some women know how to play a man like a fiddle." Her words stuck with me, a seed of doubt planted in my heart. Back home, I tried to talk to Michael. "We can't afford all this, Michael," I said one night, gesturing to the empty fridge. "Sarah's eating like we're millionaires." He bristled, his jaw tight. "She's carrying David's kid, Emily. Have some compassion." His dismissal stung, but I let it go, unaware of the truth my past life memories would soon reveal. Sarah's smile as she overheard us smug and fleeting was the first crack in my trust. I didn't know it then, but I was already stepping into the trap they'd set my kindness their weapon. By early summer, the Virginia heat clung to Fort Lee like a second skin, and the tension in our home was thicker than the humid air. Sarah Brooks had been with us for 2 months, her pregnancy now at 5 months mirroring my own, or so Michael and Sarah believed. I'd terminated my pregnancy weeks ago, a secret I guarded as I stuffed my dress with padding to maintain the illusion. My past life memories, awakened by Michael's slap, guided every move, but living with Sarah's entitlement and Michael's neglect tested my patience. Sarah's demands had escalated. She refused the canned beans and cornbread I made, insisting on fresh meat, white bread, and desserts, luxuries scarce in 1977's rationed economy. "This baby needs proper food," she'd say, patting her belly with a pout. Ever her champion, Michael drained our savings to buy her steaks and pastries, leaving me to scrape by with oatmeal and wilted greens. One afternoon, I found my hidden savings, $50 meant for baby clothes, gone from the jar in our bedroom. Michael admitted he'd taken it for Sarah's medical needs, his eyes avoiding mine. I confronted him that night, my voice low but firm. "Michael, that money was for our child. You can't keep giving everything to Sarah." He slammed his fist on the kitchen table, his face red. "You're selfish, Emily. She's a widow alone, and you're whining about a few dollars." His words echoed my past life, where he'd dismissed me until I broke. But this time I held my ground, my gaze steady. "It's not just a few dollars, it's our future." He stormed out, heading to Sarah's room, where I heard her soft laughter through the wall. The bass buzzed with whispers about Michael and Sarah. At the commissary, I caught sidelong glances from other wives, their pity mixed with curiosity. Mrs. Clara Evans, my neighbor, pulled me aside one morning as I hung laundry. "Emily, you're too good for this," she said, her voice sharp. "I saw Michael and Sarah at the diner, cozy as newlyweds. She's no widow, she's trouble." Clara's blunt and knowing words mirrored the warnings from my past life. I thanked her, my mind racing. I needed proof, not just suspicions. My investigator, Tom Hargrove, called with an update. "Sarah's story doesn't add up," he said. "No record of a David Brooks dying in that unit. I'm checking her marriage records in Richmond. Sit tight." His findings fueled my resolve. I started watching Sarah and Michael closely, noting every interaction. Michael spent hours with her, fetching her water, driving her to town for errands, while I was left to clean up her messes. Once I found a silk scarf in her room, bought with my money, no doubt, while Michael hadn't even noticed my worn-out shoes. One humid night, unable to sleep, I crept downstairs for water and froze. In the dim glow of the living room lamp, Michael and Sarah stood close, her hand on his chest, his arms around her. Their whispers stopped when they saw me, and Sarah stepped back, her face a mask of fake tears. "I was missing David," she said, her voice trembling. Michael nodded, his expression guilty. "I was comforting her, Emily. Please don't make a big deal out of it." But Sarah's eyes held no grief, only a flicker of triumph. My past life memories screamed the truth. They were lovers plotting against me. I didn't confront them then. Instead, I returned to bed, my journal open under the lamplight. I wrote, "They think I am blind, but I see everything. Sarah's no widow, and Michael's no husband." The next day, I doubled down on my plan. I met Helen Reed at the admin office, asking her to redirect my paychecks to a secret account. Michael's spending everything on Sarah, I explained. Helen, her lips pursed, nodded. I've seen his type before. You're doing the right thing, Emily. Her support was a lifeline grounding me as I navigated their deception. Sarah's behavior grew bolder. She'd complain about my cooking, tossing out delicious stew because it wasn't fresh enough. Michael backed her every time, scolding me for upsetting her. My past life knowledge kept me calm. I knew their endgame. They were waiting for my delivery to swap my baby with Sarah's, a dark-skinned child from her past encounter, to frame me for infidelity. But I had no baby, and their plan would crumble when the time came. By late June, the base's gossip reached a fever pitch. I overheard two wives whispering about Michael and Sarah's friendship at a community barbecue. One said he's always with her, not his wife. Something's off. I smiled inwardly, knowing the truth would soon break free. I called Tom again, urging him to hurry. "I'm close, Emily," he said. "Sarah's got a past she's hiding. I'll have answers soon." As I hung up, I looked at my fake belly in the mirror, my reflection fierce. Michael and Sarah thought they had me trapped, but I was weaving a net around them, and soon it would tighten. The July heat in Fort Lee, Virginia, 1977 was relentless, pressing down on the military base like a heavy hand, but the tension in our home burned hotter. Emily Carter, moved through my days with a secret. I'd terminated my pregnancy months ago, a choice hidden beneath the padded bump I wore to fool my husband, Captain Michael Thompson, and his supposed widow, Sarah Brooks. My past life memories, awakened by Michael's public slap, guided me, revealing their plan to swap my child with Sarah's to frame me for infidelity. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. I needed proof, and was starting to find it. Sarah's presence in our home had become a daily torment. She lounged in the guest room, her auburn hair fanned across pillows I washed, while I trudged to the base's admin office, typed reports, and returned to cook and clean. Her demands for luxuries, fresh peaches, white bread, even a new lipstick, drained our budget in an era of gas shortages and rationed goods. Michael, blind to my exhaustion, handed her my savings, claiming it was for her baby's health. Thanks to my supervisor, Helen Reed, I'd secured my remaining wages in a secret account, but the theft of my $50 baby fund still stung. One sweltering evening, as I folded laundry in the backyard, Mrs. Clara Evans, my sharp-tongued neighbor, leaned over the fence, her eyes narrowed. "Emily, you're too good for this mess," she said, her voice low. "I saw Michael and Sarah at the base diner, holding hands like teenagers. She's no grieving widow, she's got her claws in him." Clara's words hit like a spark to kindling, echoing my past life memories of betrayal. "Keep your eyes open, girl," she added. "Don't let them make a fool of you." I nodded, my heart pounding. Clara, a widow, knew the base's gossip mill and had no patience for deceivers. Her warning was a lifeline, urging me to act. I called Tom Hargrove, my private investigator, from a payphone at the commissary to avoid Michael's ears. "Any updates on Sarah?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. Tom's voice crackled through the line. "I'm close, Emily. No David Brooks in the unit's casualty records. I'm digging into her marriage history in Richmond. Give me a few days." His progress fueled my resolve. Sarah's widow story was unraveling, and I'd use it to trap her and Michael. Back home, I watched them closely. Michael spent hours with Sarah, fetching her iced tea or driving her to town for doctor's visits. His neglect of me was blatant. He'd forgotten my birthday, but bought Sarah a silk scarf with my money. I documented every detail in my journal, hidden under a floorboard. July 10th. Michael gave Sarah $20 for medicine. July 12th. Sarah threw up my soup and demanded steak. My fake pregnancy kept them unsuspecting, but the charade was exhausting. I'd wince theatrically, clutching my padded belly, and Michael would mutter, "Rest." Emily, his mind clearly elsewhere. One moonless night, I couldn't sleep, the humid air heavy with my growing unease. I crept downstairs for a glass of water and froze in the hallway. In the living room, lit by the soft glow of a table lamp, Michael and Sarah stood close, her hand resting on his arm, his face inches from hers. Their whispers were intimate, not the kind between friends. When they saw me, Sarah gasped, stepping back with crocodile tears. "I was talking about David," she said, her voice quivering. "Michael's been so kind." Michael nodded, his jaw tight. "She's emotional, Emily. Don't make a scene." But Sarah's eyes betrayed her, no grief, just a flicker of smugness, like she'd won a prize. My past life memories screamed the truth. They were lovers plotting to ruin me. I forced a smile, my voice calm. "Of course, Michael. I understand." I retreated to my room, my heart racing. That moment confirmed Clara's warning, and my memories hinted Sarah wasn't a widow, and Michael wasn't just helping a friend. They were scheming, and I was their target. The next day, I met Helen at the admin office during lunch. Michael's spending everything on Sarah. I said, my voice low. They're closer than he admits. Helen, her gray hair pulled tight, frowned. I've seen it before, Emily. Men like him fall for a pretty face and forget their vows. You're smart to lock down your money. She promised to keep an ear out for base gossip. Her loyalty was a quiet strength. I thanked her, feeling less alone. With Clara, Helen, and Tom on my side, I was building a network to expose the truth. At home, Sarah's entitlement grew bolder. She complained about the heat demanding a fan we couldn't afford, and tossed my cornbread in the trash, calling it stale. Michael backed her, snapping at me when I protested. She's pregnant, Emily. Show some heart. His words echoed my past life where he'd dismissed me until I broke. But this time I held my tongue, my eyes cold. I was biding my time, waiting for Tom's evidence to strike. By late July, the base was alive with whispers. I overheard two wives gossiping about Michael and Sarah's friendship at the community center. He's always with her, not his wife, one said. Poor Emily. Their pity stung, but it also meant the truth was seeping out. I called Tom again, urging him to hurry. I've got a lead on Sarah's past, he said. She was married, but not to a soldier. I'll have details soon. As I hung up, I adjusted my fake bump, my reflection in a shop window, fierce. Michael and Sarah thought they had me cornered, but I was closing in on them. August brought a storm to Fort Lee, Virginia, the sky gray and heavy, mirroring the weight of my secret knowledge. I, Emily Carter, lived a double life to Michael Thompson and Sarah Brooks. I was a pregnant wife, compliant and unsuspecting, my padded belly hiding the truth that I'd ended my pregnancy to thwart their scheme. But my past life memories, triggered by Michael's slap weeks ago, burned with clarity, revealing the full scope of their betrayal. That slap, delivered in front of our neighbors to defend Sarah, wasn't just a moment of anger. It was the key that unlocked my previous life's horrors, fueling my resolve to make them pay. The incident happened on a humid afternoon, the base buzzing with families enjoying a rare sunny day. I'd confronted Michael about stealing another $30 from my savings for Sarah's latest whim, a new dress she needed for comfort. We can't keep doing this, Michael, I'd said, my voice shaking. That money was for our baby. His face darkened, and before I could react, his hand cracked across my cheek, sending me stumbling to the gravel driveway. The crowd gasped, wives clutching their kids, soldiers shifting uncomfortably. Sarah stood behind him, her hand on her belly, a faint smirk betraying her pitying act. Emily's just upset, she said softly, as if I were the villain. I don't want to cause trouble. Blood trickled from my lip, and as I pressed my hand to my face, the world spun. Not from pain, but from a flood of memories, vivid, agonizing scenes from a life I'd lived before. In that past life, I saw myself, Emily Carter, welcoming Sarah into our home just as I had now. Michael had brought her to Fort Lee, claiming she was David Brooks's widow, and I'd opened my heart blind to their affair. They'd favored her, ignored me, and when I gave birth, they swapped my healthy baby with Sarah's dark-skinned child, accusing me of infidelity with a foreigner. Michael divorced me, the base shunned me, and I lost my job at the admin office. Exiled to rural Virginia. I'd cared for Michael's mother, Margaret, after she fell and became paralyzed. My days filled with her insults and endless tasks, feeding, cleaning, enduring her cruelty for 30 years. Meanwhile, Michael rose to a high-ranking officer, married Sarah, and raised her child in comfort. Before my death, they visited smug and prosperous and confessed Sarah was Michael's high school sweetheart. The baby was hers, and they'd framed me to protect her reputation. I died broken, hating them, my life, a sacrifice for their happiness. Now, in 1977, as I stood in the driveway, the taste of blood sharp, those memories crystallized. Michael's slap wasn't new, it had happened in that past life, the exact moment that broke me then. But this time I wasn't the naive Emily. I wiped my face, my eyes locking onto Michael's. He looked away, guiding Sarah back to the house, her arm looped through his. The neighbors dispersed, whispering about my jealousy, but I didn't care. I had a second chance, a cosmic gift to rewrite my fate, and I wouldn't waste it. Inside, I locked myself in the bedroom, my journal open. I wrote, "They think they'll ruin me again. They're wrong. I know their plan: swap the babies, frame me, divorce me. But I'm one step ahead. My heart pounded with purpose. I'd already terminated my pregnancy, ensuring their scheme had no leverage. Now I needed to expose their lies." Tom Hargrove's investigation was key, and I trusted him to uncover Sarah's true past. The next day I met Clara Evans at her porch, her eyes sharp and concerned. You okay after yesterday, Emily? She asked, handing me a lemonade. I nodded, my cheek still tender. Clara, you were right about Sarah. She's no widow. Clara's jaw tightened. I knew it. She's got Michael wrapped around her finger. You need to fight, girl. Her support, fierce and unwavering, bolstered me. I confided in her about Tom's investigation, and she promised to keep an ear out for gossip, her network of basewives a hidden asset. At the admin office, Helen Reed noticed my bruise. Michael's got no right, she said, her voice low. You need anything, Emily, you tell me. I asked her to watch for any base records on Sarah Brooks, knowing her access to files could help. Helen agreed, her loyalty a quiet strength. With Clara and Helen, I wasn't alone, but the weight of my past life's pain drove me. I remembered every detail, the public humiliation, the divorce papers, Margaret's cruelty as I bathed her, the laughter of neighbors as I carried Sarah's child, branded a cheat. By mid-August, Tom called with a breakthrough. Sarah was married to a carpenter, not a soldier, he said. Her husband died last year, and her parents tried to sell her to another man. She ran to Michael during his mission in Richmond. No widow benefits, no David Brooks. They're lying. His words confirmed my memories. Sarah was Michael's first love, and he'd fabricated her story to bring her here. I thanked Tom, my mind racing. I'd use this to confront them, but not yet. I needed them to think I was still their pawn. At home, Sarah's smugness grew. She'd hum as she ate my cooked meals, tossing scraps she deemed tasteless. Michael, oblivious to my fake pregnancy, scolded me for upsetting her. I played along, my eyes cold, my journal filling with their sins. The base's gossip grew louder. Wives questioned Michael's devotion to Sarah, and I let it spread, knowing it would weaken them. My past life's pain was my fuel, and I was ready to burn their lies to the ground. To protect his lover, my husband betrayed me with a lie. Reborn. I exposed them and took back my life. The late August sun baked Fort Lee, Virginia in 1977, turning the air thick and sticky, but the fire in my chest burned hotter. I, Emily Carter, stood in the wreckage of my marriage to Captain Michael Thompson, my cheek still tender from the slap he'd delivered weeks ago, to defend Sarah Brooks, the supposed widow of his fallen comrade. That slap had awakened my past life memories, revealing their plan to swap my unborn child with Sarah's, to frame me for infidelity. I'd already thwarted their scheme by secretly terminating my pregnancy, padding my dress to maintain the illusion, but now it was time to strike back. The taste of blood from that day lingered in my mind, a reminder of the betrayal I'd endured in my previous life and the justice I'd claim in this one. I sat in my bedroom, the door locked, my journal open on the desk. The pages were filled with evidence. August 15th. Michael took $30 for Sarah's dress. August 20th. Sarah threw out my stew and demanded steak. Every line was a step toward their downfall. I'd secured my wages in a secret account thanks to Helen Reed, my supervisor at the base's admin office, but Michael's theft of my savings for Sarah's whims had pushed me to act. I needed concrete proof of their lies and knew who could get it. I contacted Tom Hargrove, a retired military police officer who turned into a private investigator weeks ago. I called him again from a payphone outside the commissary, my voice low to avoid eavesdroppers. Tom, any news on Sarah? I asked, glancing at the base wives passing by, their whispers about Michael and Sarah now a constant hum. Got something big, Tom replied, his voice steady. Sarah was married to a carpenter named Robert Klein, not a soldier. He died in a work accident last year. No record of a David Brooks in Michael's unit. She's no widow, Emily, and Michael's covering for her. My heart raced. This was the key. Sarah's false widow story was their weak point. I thanked Tom and hung up, my mind spinning. My past life memories showed me that Sarah was Michael's high school sweetheart, and now Tom's findings confirm this. They'd fabricated her story to bring her into our home, exploiting my kindness while plotting to ruin me. I needed to use this, but carefully. Confronting them too soon could tip them off. Instead, I'd tighten the noose, slowly, letting their guilt betray them. Back home, Sarah lounged in the living room, flipping through a magazine while I scrubbed the kitchen floor. Her pregnancy was at 7 months, her belly prominent, and she played it like a queen. Emily, this house is so stuffy, she whined. Can't we get a fan? Michael, entering with a bag of groceries. Fresh apples and cream, no doubt for her, nodded. I'll figure it out, he said, ignoring my glare. I straightened, wiping sweat from my brow. We can't afford it, Michael. Not with your salary going to her. My voice was calm but pointed. He bristled, his eyes narrowing. She's carrying David's kid, Emily. Show some decency. His lie was practiced, but I saw the flicker of unease in his face. Sarah's gaze darted to him, a silent warning. I smiled thinly, clutching my fake bump. Of course, Michael, whatever you say. But inside I was seething. I'd make them choke on their lies. I met Mrs. Clara Evans, my neighbor, at her porch the next morning. Her sharp eyes scanned me as she handed me coffee. She said, "You're holding up Emily, but you look ready to snap." I confided in Tom's findings, keeping my voice low. Sarah's no widow. She's Michael's old flame, and they're lying to everyone. Clara's jaw tightened. I knew she was trouble. I'll spread the word quietly. Let the base wives chew on it. Clara's network was gold. Her gossip could turn the tide against them. I took another step to secure my position. I asked Helen to check the base records at the administrative office to see if Sarah Brooks or David Brooks was mentioned. "Something's off about her," I told her. Helen, her gray hair pinned tight, nodded. "I'll dig, Emily. Men like Michael think they're slick, but they always slip up." Like Clara's, her support was a quiet strength bolstering my resolve. I also hid my remaining cash, $75, from a side job typing letters in a locked box under the bedroom floorboard, ensuring Michael couldn't touch it. That evening, I tested their guilt. At dinner, as Sarah picked at my casserole, I said casually, "Michael, why doesn't Sarah get VA benefits? If David were a soldier, she should have support." The room went still. Sarah's fork froze and Michael's face paled. "It's complicated," he muttered. Sarah recovered, her voice sweet. "The paperwork's delayed, Emily. You know how the system is." But her eyes betrayed panic. I smiled, sipping my water. "Sure, I'll ask around at the office. Maybe Helen can help speed it up." Their unease was palpable, and I relished it. The base gossip was shifting. I overheard wives questioning Michael's devotion to Sarah at the community center. "He's never with Emily," one said. "It's like Sarah's his wife." I let the whispers grow, knowing they'd weaken Michael's standing. Tom called again, his voice urgent. "Found a marriage certificate. Sarah married Robert Klein in '74. No divorce record and no mention of a David Brooks. Michael's in deep, Emily." I thanked him, my plan solidifying. I'd confront them soon, but first I'd let their lies fester, their fear my weapon. September's arrival in Fort Lee, Virginia, brought a cooler breeze, but the storm brewing in our home was anything but calm. Emily Carter, was a woman reborn. My past life memories a map to navigate the betrayal of my husband, Captain Michael Thompson, and his lover, Sarah Brooks. I'd terminated my pregnancy to derail their plan to swap my child with Sarah's and frame me for infidelity, my fake bump keeping them fooled. Tom Hargrove's investigation had confirmed Sarah was no widow. She was Michael's high school sweetheart, her marriage to a carpenter named Robert Klein, ending with his death, not a soldier's. Armed with this truth, I was ready to tighten the screws. Michael's neglect had grown blatant. He spent evenings with Sarah, driving her to town for checkups or buying her luxuries, chocolates, a new coat, while I scraped by on canned soup. The base buzzed with gossip wives whispering about Michael's other woman. Clara Evans, my neighbor, fanned the flames, dropping hints at the commissary about Sarah's questionable past. "She's no widow," Clara told a group of wives, her voice low but sharp. "Emily's the real victim here." Their nods gave me hope the community was turning. Thanks to Helen Reed, I'd secured my finances and wages safe in a secret account, and my journal documented every move. September 3rd, Michael bought Sarah a $40 coat. September 5th, Sarah demanded ice cream and threw out my bread. But the theft of my $50 savings still burned. I decided to confront Michael not with accusations, but with a demand to expose his guilt. As he sat at the kitchen table that evening, I stood tall, my fake belly prominent. "Michael, you took my $50 for Sarah. I want it back, now." He scoffed, his eyes cold. "It's gone, Emily. I spent it on her medical bills. You're pregnant, stop being so petty." His dismissal echoed my past life, but I was done playing the fool. "Then I'll report you to the base commander," I said, my voice steady. "Stealing my money for another woman, that's misconduct. And while I'm at it, I'll ask why Sarah gets no VA benefits. If she's a widow, where's her support?" Michael's face drained of color, and Sarah, overhearing from the living room, froze, her magazine slipping to the floor. "What are you implying?" Michael snapped, but his voice wavered. Sarah stepped in, her tone sweet but strained. "Emily, don't make trouble. The VA's just slow. You're upsetting the baby." She patted her belly, now 8 months, along her eyes, darting to Michael. I smiled coldly. "I'm sure the commander can sort it out, or I'll ask why there's no record of a David Brooks in your unit, Michael." The air grew thick with their panic. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came. Michael stood, his fists clenched. "You're out of line, Emily. Drop this or I'll file for divorce." That threat had broken me in my past life, and fear of social ruin silenced my protests. But now I laughed, sharp and unafraid. "Go ahead, Michael. Divorce me. But you'll return every cent you stole, or I'll tell the commander everything you're spending your lies." Sarah's fake widow story. His jaw dropped, stunned by my defiance. He wasn't used to this, Emily, the one who fought back. I pressed harder, my voice low. "If Sarah's a soldier's widow, why is she relying on you, not the VA? Did her whole family die too, or is she just clinging to you for other reasons?" Sarah's face flushed, and she turned away, muttering about feeling ill. Michael grabbed her arm, guiding her to her room, but his eyes lingered on me, a mix of anger and fear. I'd hit a nerve, and it felt good. The next day, Michael scrambled. He moved Sarah to a cheap apartment off base, claiming it was better for her health. I knew the truth. He was scared of my threat. Clara saw them loading boxes into his truck and pulled me aside. "He's running, Emily, but he can't hide. The base is talking, everyone knows he's too close to her." I thanked her, my resolve strengthening. Helen at the office confirmed no VA records existed for Sarah Brooks. "She's a fraud," Helen said. "You've got him cornered." Tom called with final proof. Sarah married Robert Klein in '74. After he died, her parents tried to sell her to another man who assaulted her. She fled to Michael during his Richmond mission. They're lovers, Emily, and he's been lying to protect her. I thanked him, my plan clear. I'd keep the pregnancy charade, letting Michael and Sarah think their scheme was safe. But when Sarah gave birth, I'd expose them, using their own lies against them. At home, Michael avoided me, his guilt palpable. Sarah called him constantly in her new apartment, her voice plaintive through the phone. I overheard him promising her money, food, anything she needed. But he was stretched thin, his salary no longer enough without my savings. I smiled, adjusting my fake bump. Their world was crumbling, and I was just getting started. September's fading warmth in Fort Lee, Virginia, 1977, did little to ease the chill in my heart. Emily Carter, was a woman reborn, and my past life memories were a beacon guiding me through the betrayal of my husband, Captain Michael Thompson, and his lover, Sarah Brooks. I'd terminated my pregnancy months ago to derail their plan to swap my child with Sarah's dark-skinned baby and frame me for infidelity, my padded dress keeping them fooled. My private investigator, Tom Hargrove, had confirmed Sarah was no widow. She was Michael's high school sweetheart, and her widow story was a lie to infiltrate our home. With the truth in my grasp, I was ready to set the stage for their downfall. Tom's final report came on a crisp morning as I sat in a diner off base, the clatter of plates masking our conversation. "Sarah Brooks married Robert Klein, a carpenter, in '74, he said, sliding a folder across the table. "He died in a sawmill accident last year. Her parents, hard up for cash, tried to marry her off to a local man, John Harris, who assaulted her. She fled to Richmond, where she ran into Michael during his mission last spring. They rekindled their old romance, and he made up the David Brooks story to bring her here." The folder held documents, a marriage certificate, Klein's death record, and a police report of the assault. No trace of a soldier named David Brooks existed in military records. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding. My past life memories had shown Sarah as Michael's first love, their bond unbreakable despite her forced marriage. Now Tom's evidence confirmed it. "There's more," he said, his voice low. "Sarah's pregnancy might not be Michael's. She admitted to him that the child could be Harris's, but he's covering for her, obsessed." I nodded, the pieces clicking. In my past life, they'd swapped Sarah's dark-skinned child with mine, banking on Michael's love to shield her shame. This time I'd use their secret to destroy them. Back at Fort Lee, I moved carefully, my fake pregnancy a shield. Now 8 months along, Sarah lived in an off-base apartment Michael had rented, but she still haunted our home, demanding meals and attention. Michael, stretched thin by her expenses, grew irritable. His officer's salary no match for her appetite for luxuries, new dresses, fresh fruit, even a radio we couldn't afford in 1977's rationed economy. I played the dutiful wife, cooking and cleaning, but my journal, hidden under a bedroom floorboard, cataloged their sins. September 10th. Michael spent $25 on Sarah's coat. September 12th. Sarah threw up my soup and demanded peaches. The base buzzed with gossip, fueled by Mrs. Clara Evans, my sharp-eyed neighbor. She'd spread word of Sarah's questionable past, whispering to wives at the commissary. "She's no widow, Emily's the one suffering." The tide was turning. Wives who once pitied Sarah now eyed her suspiciously. Helen Reed, My supervisor pulled me aside at the admin office. I checked the VA files. She said her gray eyes were sharp. No benefits for Sarah Brooks. She's lying and Michael's complicit. Her confirmation paired with Tom's report was my arsenal. I tested their nerves at dinner, Sarah picking at my casserole while Michael glowered. Michael, I said casually, I asked Helen about Sarah's VA benefits. She found nothing. If David Brooks were a soldier, why no support? Sarah's fork clattered, her face paling. Michael coughed, his voice tight. It's delayed, Emily. Bureaucracy. Sarah nodded, her smile forced. Yes, just paperwork issues. But their eyes betrayed panic, and I savored it. I'll follow up with Colonel Harris, I said, naming the base commander. He'll sort it out. Michael's jaw tightened, and Sarah excused herself, claiming nausea. I'd already contacted Colonel Harris, slipping a preliminary report through Helen about Michael's misuse of funds and Sarah's false widow status. I held back Tom's full findings, waiting for the perfect moment. Clara pulled me aside the next day, her voice low. The wives are talking, Emily. They saw Michael and Sarah at the diner too close for comfort. Keep pushing, they're cracking. Her network was my megaphone, amplifying their shame. At home, I kept up the charade, wincing theatrically as I carried laundry, my padded bump convincing. Michael, distracted by Sarah's calls, barely noticed me, his focus on her looming delivery. I overheard him on the phone, promising her, "Don't worry, we'll handle Emily when the time comes." My past life memories screamed their plan. They'd swap her baby with mine, accuse me of cheating, and divorce me in disgrace. But without a child, their scheme was doomed, and I was ready to spring my trap. I met Tom one last time, finalizing my strategy. He advised you to have witnesses if you confront them at the hospital. The disciplinary board will need hard evidence. I nodded, tucking the folder into my bag. Sarah's due date was near, and I'd stage a fake labor to coincide, exposing them in front of the base. My journal entry that night was simple. They think they've won. They're wrong. The hospital will be their end. October's first frost painted Fort Lee, Virginia in 1977, but the air in the base hospital was electric with tension. Emily Carter, had woven a web around Michael Thompson and Sarah Brooks, my past life memories guiding every step. I'd terminated my pregnancy to foil their plan to swap my child with Sarah's dark-skinned baby and frame me for infidelity, my padded dress hiding the truth. Tom Hargrove's investigation had exposed Sarah as Michael's high school sweetheart, not a soldier's widow, and I'd primed the disciplinary board with a report. As Sarah went into labor, I was ready for the final act. I'd prepared meticulously, stuffing a doll with a curse, Michael Thompson and Sarah Brooks. May your lies destroy you, to replace the baby they expected. Sarah's screams echoed from the delivery room next to mine, her labor in full swing. Michael rushed me to the hospital, believing my staged groans of contractions. He handed me a thermos of soup, his eyes watchful. Drink this, Emily. It'll help. I knew it was laced with sedatives meant to knock me out for the swap. I sipped it, pretending to weaken my lips, curling inwardly. He had no idea I was awake and ready. In my hospital bed, I groaned occasionally, mimicking Sarah's wails to keep up the act. Michael paced his face taut, splitting his time between our rooms. He'd arranged for us to be side by side, which was perfect for his plan. His mother, Margaret Thompson, hovered, her eyes greedy. She'd backed their scheme, expecting my ruin. Michael slipped into her room when Sarah's screams peaked, leaving Margaret to watch me. I seized the moment, whispering to her, and I dropped $200, which I had changed earlier. Maybe at home, can you check? Her eyes lit up, and she scurried off, dreaming of pocketing the cash. Alone, I tore the padding from my belly, placing the doll beside me, its curse hidden under a blanket. Sarah delivered a boy, his cries piercing the hall. Michael moved fast, wrapping the dark-skinned infant and rushing to my room. He swapped the doll for Sarah's baby, his hands shaking, thinking I was sedated. As he turned to leave, I sat up, my voice icy. Michael, what are you doing? He froze, nearly dropping the child, his face ashen. I was checking on you, he stammered. I ripped the blanket off the doll, revealing its lifeless form. The curse scrawled across it gleamed under the hospital lights. That's not my baby, I said, loud enough for the gathering nurses to hear. You tried to frame me with Sarah's child. Michael's eyes darted, panic overtaking him. No, Emily, this is yours. You cheated, he shouted, pointing to the wailing infant. Margaret burst in, disheveled from her fruitless search, and screamed, That baby's black, Emily, you whore. Her words drew a crowd. Doctors, patients, base wives craning for a glimpse. Wheeled in post-delivery, Sarah joined the chaos, her voice weak but venomous. "Emily, how could you betray Michael like this?" She clutched her gown, playing the victim. The crowd murmured, some accusing me, others doubting Michael's story. I stood, my voice clear. "I haven't given birth, Michael. I ended my pregnancy months ago after you slapped me for her." I pulled medical records from my bag, handing them to a nurse. "Check the dates. My baby's gone. That child is Sarah's." The room fell silent, the crowd's eyes shifting to Michael and Sarah. Before they could respond, Colonel Harris and two disciplinary officers stormed in their uniforms, stark against the chaos. "Who filed the report?" Harris demanded. I stepped forward. "I did, sir. Michael Thompson misused funds for Sarah Brooks, who's not a widow. They plan to frame me with her child born of an assault she hid. I have proof, investigators' reports, marriage records, and my medical history." I handed over Tom's folder, my voice steady. Michael shouted, "She's lying." "That's her baby," Sarah echoed. "It's Emily's fault." But the officers weren't swayed. Harris scanned the documents, his face grim. "This is serious. You're both coming with us." They cuffed Michael and Sarah, their protests fading as they were led away. The crowd gasped, whispers of fraud and affair spreading. Margaret collapsed, sobbing, but I ignored her. My trap had sprung, and their lies were exposed. In the crowd, Clara Evans caught my eye, nodding with pride. Helen Reed, arriving late, squeezed my hand. "You did it, Emily." The hospital cleared, and I stood alone, the doll's curse symbolizing my victory. Michael and Sarah's scheme had crumbled, and I was free to rebuild my past life pain, avenged in one perfect moment. October's chill settled over Fort Lee, Virginia in 1977, but the fire of my resolve burned brighter than ever. I, Emily Carter, had outmaneuvered my husband, Captain Michael Thompson, and his lover, Sarah Brooks, whose false widow story had unraveled under my careful planning. My past life memories had guided me, revealing their scheme to swap my child with Sarah's dark-skinned baby to frame me for infidelity. I'd thwarted them by secretly terminating my pregnancy, maintaining the illusion with a padded bump, and now in the hospital's sterile chaos, I'd exposed their lies with a doll instead of a baby. The military disciplinary board, alerted by my report, was closing in, and justice was at hand. The hospital room was a storm of accusations. Michael, clutching Sarah's wailing infant, had tried to swap it with the bundle beside me, only to find a doll inscribed with a curse: "Michael Thompson and Sarah Brooks, may your lies destroy you." His face blanched as I sat up, my voice cutting through the crowd's gasps. "That baby's not mine, officers," I said, pointing to the dark-skinned child. "Michael and Sarah planned to frame me. She's no widow, she's his lover, and that's her child," Sarah shrieked. "She's lying." But her panic betrayed her. Michael stammered, "This is her baby. She cheated." The lead officer, a stern man with a clipboard, silenced them. "Enough. We're taking you both in." I'd contacted the disciplinary board days ago, slipping a detailed report to Colonel Harris through Helen Reed, my supervisor at the admin office. My evidence included Tom Hargrove's findings. Sarah was married to a carpenter, Robert Klein, not a soldier, named David Brooks, and had fled to Michael after an assault by another man, arranged by her parents. I included my medical records, proving I'd terminated my pregnancy months earlier, and witness statements from Clara Evans, who'd seen Michael and Sarah's intimacy. The officers restrained Michael and Sarah, their protests drowned by the crowd's murmurs. "You've got the wrong person," Michael yelled, but the officers ignored him, escorting them out. The crowd dispersed, leaving Margaret Thompson, Michael's mother, sobbing on the floor. She'd conspired with them, believing I'd be disgraced, but now she groveled. "Emily, it was Sarah's fault," she pleaded. "Don't let them take my son. You're his wife." Her desperation mirrored my past life, where I'd served her for decades, enduring her cruelty. I looked down, my voice cold. "You chose your side, Margaret. Live with it." She wailed, but I felt no pity. Her betrayal had sealed her fate. The investigation moved swiftly. Michael, charged with misconduct and fraud, was dishonorably discharged, his officer's career in ruins. Sarah faced charges of deception and attempted fraud, spending 3 months in detention before her release. They returned to Michael's hometown in rural Virginia, a far cry from the prosperous life they'd enjoyed in my past life. Their relationship, built on lies, crumbled fast. Michael, infertile from a war injury, resented raising Sarah's child, a boy named James, whose dark skin drew stares in their small town. Without my money to fund her luxuries, Sarah's glow faded. Her dresses patched her meals sparse. Clara Evans visited me a week later, her eyes gleaming. The base is buzzing, Emily. Everyone knows Michael and Sarah got what they deserved. She'd spread the truth, ensuring their shame followed them. Helen Reed, too, congratulated me. You played it smart, Emily. Now focus on you. Their support anchored me as I planned my future free from Michael's shadow. But Sarah's story wasn't over. In their rural home, Margaret fell while fetching firewood, paralyzing her from the waist down. Michael, unwilling to care for her, forced the task on Sarah. She never won, for hard work grew bitter, her dreams of luxury shattered. After weeks of cleaning bedpans and enduring Margaret's complaints, Sarah snapped. She began lacing Margaret's food with small doses of rat poison, hoping to free herself. 2 weeks later, Margaret died, blood seeping from her eyes and mouth, a gruesome end that screamed foul play. Michael called for an autopsy, desperate to clear his name. The results were undeniable poisoning. Sarah was arrested for murder, facing a life sentence. James, her son, was left with Michael, who grudged every moment of raising him. The boy, innocent but caught in their wreckage, grew up in poverty, shunned by the town for his mother's crimes. Michael's days were a cycle of labor and regret, his dreams of power gone, his life a mirror of the misery he'd inflicted on me in my past life. I stayed in Fort Lee, renting a small apartment with my savings. I enrolled in night classes, using the GI Bill to study engineering, determined to rebuild my life. The base community, once quick to judge, now admired my strength. Clara brought me homemade pies, and Helen slipped me extra shifts to boost my income. Walking the base's quiet streets, I felt the weight of my past life lifting. Justice wasn't just their punishment, it was my freedom to rise. 20 years later, in the spring of 1997, I stepped out of a sleek black sedan outside a Virginia aerospace firm, my heels clicking on the pavement. Emily Carter, was a senior engineer, my name etched on patents for aircraft designs that soared above the skies I'd once only dreamed of. My journey hadn't been easy, nights spent studying calculus while working double shifts, weekends poring over textbooks funded by the GI Bill, and my grit. But every sacrifice had built this life, a stark contrast to the broken woman I'd been in my past life, serving Michael Thompson's family in rural Virginia. Fort Lee was a memory now, its 1977 gossip faded, but its lessons were etched in my soul. My past life memories, awakened by Michael's slap, had driven me to expose his and Sarah Brooks's scheme to frame me with her child. I'd outsmarted them, revealing their lies in a hospital showdown, and watched the military disciplinary board dismantle their lives. Michael was discharged. Sarah was imprisoned for murdering his mother, and their son James grew up in poverty under Michael's resentful care. Justice had been served, but my story wasn't complete until I faced Michael one last time. That morning, as I inspected a factory under my firm's contract, I saw him, a hunched figure in a security guard's uniform, his hair white, his face lined at just 45. Once a proud captain, Michael Thompson now watched the gate of a facility I helped run. His eyes widened as I approached, surrounded by assistants who called me Ms. Carter. He recognized me, his jaw dropping, unable to speak. I paused, my gaze steady, and he shuffled forward, blocking my car as I left. "Emily," he rasped, his voice trembling. "I need to talk." I stepped out, arms folded, my tailored suit, a far cry from the worn dresses of 1977. He looked like the broken Emily of my past life, drained, defeated. "I'm sorry," he said, wringing his hands. "I wronged you. For 20 years I've dreamed of a life where I was a big man married to Sarah while you suffered in the countryside serving my mother. I was wrong, Emily. So wrong." I laughed, cold and sharp. "You dream of that life because I lived it, Michael. In my past life, you and Sarah swapped my baby, framed me, and left me to rot. I served your mother for 30 years, despised by everyone, while you thrived. But fate gave me a second chance." His lips trembled, his eyes wide. "How do you know that?" he whispered, as if my words had cracked his world. "Because I died once," I said, stepping closer. "I lived that misery, carrying your mother's weight, enduring her curses while you and Sarah laughed. Now look at you, a gate guard scraping by, raising a child you hate. Did you think I'd forgive you, that I'd help you climb out of this pit?" He dropped to his knees, tears streaking his face. "Please, Emily, I'm begging. Please help me." In my past life, I'd been soft, forgiving, even after their betrayal. But not now. I turned to the factory manager beside me, my voice calm. "That guard, Michael Thompson, he's unreliable. His character is poor. You might want to reconsider his employment." The manager nodded, scribbling a note. "You're right, Ms. Carter, we'll handle it." Michael's face crumpled, but I felt no pity. He'd lost his job, just as I'd lost everything in my past life. I stepped back into the car, the engine humming as we pulled away. I saw Michael slump through the window, a broken man in a world he'd made. My past life's pain, 30 years of servitude, mockery, and despair, had been avenged. I'd ensured he'd live the misery I'd endured, a fitting punishment for his crimes. James Sarah's son was the only tragedy, an innocent caught in their sins, raised in a town that shunned him. I'd considered helping him, but Michael's resentment made it impossible. My justice was for me, not them. Back in my office, I sat at my desk, surrounded by blueprints and awards. My rebirth was my journey from Fort Lee's scorned wife to a respected engineer. Clara Evans had sent me a card last Christmas, and I'm proud of my rise. Helen Reed, retired now, called occasionally, her voice warm. Their support had carried me through those early years, and my own determination, fueled by past life pain, had built the rest. Michael would never cross my path again, but if he did, he'd learn I never forgot and I never forgave. My life was mine now, reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. Justice wasn't just Michael's fall, it was my triumph, a testament to the woman I'd become. As I looked out over the Virginia skyline, I knew my rebirth was complete. The past was buried, and I was free.